Imagine that you are driving along a dimly lit street late at night in the middle of the city. It is pitch black and raining heavily, and you are alone. You hear the wipers on the windscreen going back and forth trying to keep the window clear. You're currently driving around a very poor and crime-ridden part of the city. You recently heard from a friend that there are criminals in this part of the city who will often pretend to be injured on the side of the road to flag down cars. When the car stops, they will pull a knife or gun on the driver and steal the vehicle, money, and anything they can get. You look at your phone and you have no signal. As you're driving, you see a man standing hunched over on the side of the road. He is covered with what looks like blood and his clothes are ripped and dirty. He's waving you over to stop with one hand and the other one is held behind him. He looks like his other arm might be injured, but you can't tell from the road. He looks frightened and desperate, but the rain is making it hard to see. You have no phone service and therefore no GPS, so you have no idea how far you are from the nearest police station or a hospital. What do you want to do? So this is an example of a situation from a role-playing game, where you as the player choose what you want to do in that situation. Your choices carry the story forward. You can roll dice to determine how successful you are in some of the things you want to do. For example, if you want to see clearer through the rain, you might roll for a certain ability to see clearer, like perception. If you did stop and try to help the man, perhaps you would roll for education to see if you could administer first aid. If you got attacked, you might have to roll for agility to see how fast you can run away or how well you can get away from them. Or you could roll for strength to fight him off. This role-playing game, the one that I'm trying to create, is Christian and specifically trying to be biblical. So the situations in this game that I'm presenting will often try to determine moral and ethical choices and to try to work out what the right decisions are. This might involve anything from investigation, influencing others, intimidating, bargaining, protecting, fighting, running, chasing people down, all the way to actual combat, and then healing people, seeing the future, and performing miracles as well, among other things. So what I want to do here in this introduction is to give you a quick overview of the system. And then in subsequent videos, I'll go into more details about each section. The idea here is to create a biblical Christian tabletop role-playing game. We draw as much as possible from the Bible, but also to try to make it practical and interesting and fun to play. So in videos 1 and 2, I'll talk about why I'm doing this, what the purpose is, and what kind of stories or narratives you can tell. And in video 3, I'll talk about possible settings, different things or different ways or places in which the story can be set. Now, starting from the 4th video, I'll start to talk about the system itself and building a character, in particular about a character's attributes and skills. So let me show you that through a draft mock-up of a character sheet like this. So firstly, video 4 covers the 4 attributes, which are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Each of these has 3 skills, which I'm calling talents. These are the main areas where players will roll the dice whenever they need to do a skill check, which I'm calling facing a trial. In video 5, I talk about the dice, which will be drawn from the 7 polyhedral dice and be the 6-sided, 8-sided, 10-sided, and 12-sided dice, which players roll and then add the modifiers for the talents. Video 6 talks about determining success and failure of a dice roll, which will depend on how high they roll and be based on 4 levels of success, which are failure, conditional success, normal success, and profound success. Rolling a failure, though, does mean you gain experience points, which you can use later. The modifiers on the talents will help push the dice up into the success range, but also the characters have motivations, which are equivalent to classes. These classes have a specialization in one or several of the attributes, and these are covered in videos 7 and 8. There are 7 different motivations: the seer, the expert, the influencer, the patron, the leader, the counselor, and the caretaker. Each of these motivations has specializations in certain talents called works, which they can use to accomplish certain things. These are specific to their motivation, and when they are using a work, they add more points to their role to increase their chance of success. Each character will have 2 motivations: a major one, which gives them a certain increase in points when you're using those works, and a minor one, which gives less points per work. The next section after the classes is called the callings, and this is covered in video 9. These are further specializations that give additional points to the talents in a certain attribute, but also add additional points when using spiritual gifts. So the callings include prophetic, apostolic, evangelistic, teaching, and pastoral. Speaking of spiritual gifts, these are the gifts of wisdom, knowledge, faith, healing, miracles, prophecy, discernment, tongues, and interpretation, and are covered in video 10. Players will access the gifts by using a different system than the talents, specifically by using a 20-sided dice, and depending on the calling they have, the character will have a greater ability in some of the gifts rather than the others. So, those are the 4 main aspects of a character in the game: talents, motivations, callings, and giftings. There are also minor things like additional skills, as well as goals, allegiances to other players, and flaws, which also add or subtract points to a roll, as well as the use of equipment, which can also add additional dice, and these will be covered in video 11. And that's it. That's a very broad summary of the system. In this channel, I'll look at each of those areas in more detail and talk about how they work, including such things as stress, which is basically the character's health, which I'll cover in video 12, and at the same time how conflict works between players and NPCs, which is essentially an opposed role. So both physical conflict and social conflict. My aim is to try and design and create something that can be played by as wide number of people as possible, so please feel free to provide comments, suggestions, ideas, criticisms, whatever you like to the comments. If you're interested in following this journey, please subscribe, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.